next one, like in between those two and back to the middle, because you want to make sure that you're verifying that that sensitivity is steady and perfectly consistent across the entire application. Because it's okay to occasionally throw away good product. It is not okay to allow contaminants downstream. Nothing less than 100% detection is acceptable. So we have to keep that in mind as we're doing our product setup, is that this is a critical control point for food safety. So we cannot, and I've seen plenty of plants where like, they'll be like, oh, well, I ran it through 3 times after it failed, so it's good. That means it's failing 1 out of 4 times, right? Can't happen. So whenever you get a fail, take it seriously and go back and run these samples through as many times as you need to get confident again after you've made your change. But don't continue running them without making a change and say you're good. Every time you miss a sample, you make a change. All right. Generally speaking, when I miss a sample, I'm running 10 of each, as just a matter of course for myself. Your company policy may differ. Any other questions? All right, so that's it for the software. You don't really need to know about any of the other access levels. There's like 10 of them, and then there's service and all that stuff. So because they asked us to provide information for the electricians, next thing we're going to talk about is the main components of the machine, what they do, and then after that we're going to talk about what it looks like when they're broken, and then how to replace them. Okay? How much time we got?
Let's see. It's 3:25.
Yeah, we still got a half hour. All right. So the machine has a couple major functional components. We have the head. This contains your transmit and receive coils. We have the receiver and transmitter board. Let's go ahead and just open this thing up. I love this thing. Like, I didn't buy my own tools. When I got to METTLER, they just had the tools of someone who was fired, and I just took them because I was like, I'm too lazy to buy my own tools. And they had this thing in it. I've lost 2 of them and bought 2 more. They're so good. Let's open this thing up, and we're going to take a look inside at the wiring attending to the module and the transmitter board. Come on. You may notice that I'm not turning it off. That's fine. As long as you're not unplugging anything, if you're just looking, you're not going to do any harm by leaving it on. If you start unplugging stuff with it on, you're going to have problems. Come on. It was a good bolt. All right, so let's take a look inside here. Inside this box, we have a couple of components, all right? We have the module computer. This does all of the computer work for the machine, all right? We have this interconnect board, which is just a bridge between the module and the power supply. And then back here, behind this metal plate, we have the transmit and receive boards, all right? Things that you can replace in this box, this module. Things you can replace if you're feeling real confident. The interconnect board, like if METTLER tells you have an interconnect board, you can swap that. That's not incredibly hard. Don't ever open this metal plate. All right? Inside this metal plate is all like the radio stuff, like the analog radio equipment. And if you bump a wire in there, like there's a bunch of really thick wires just coming out through the head. If you bump one of those, you might throw the machine out of balance, and then I got to come here and spend 8 hours soldering capacitors onto a board to fix it. All right? So, things to know about the inside of this box. You may notice that there's nothing really preventing these cables from getting caught on the edge of this. If you end up opening this and closing it as electricians or whatever, all right, be very careful when you're closing this thing up to not pinch your cables. These twisted pairs are not twisted out of caution, they're twisted out of necessity. All right, if you crush them together, it will cause problems. All right, so every time I open one of these machines, I verify that nothing was crushed. And then the next thing we can check is our battery on top. We want to make sure that it's free of corrosion.
And which one is the battery?
This green thing right here.
Okay.
If that gets corroded, you'll start losing your settings. So if you turn the machine off, you'll open it up and you'll have no products. All right. But other than that, other than making sure that it's not other than making sure that it's not, nothing's crushed in there, the only thing you're gonna really need to do with that thing is swap the module when it inevitably breaks in a couple years. Because they're not forever parts. It's all relatively high power, and it's all relatively precise equipment. And sometimes they just go. Your touchscreen might go out, and if it does, you just got to buy a whole new computer because it's attached to the thing, right? And in that, I argue, don't wail on the touchscreen. Like, I'll show you guys how to recalibrate it once it's off. But don't wail on it. I'm mostly opening this to turn it off. We'll go down here and finish up in a second. Let's go ahead and turn it off.
So that's how you turn the screen off.
Yeah, I just hit that switch. But we're going to be down here and look at this in detail.
Is that the only way you turn that screen off?
Is that
the only way, besides unplugging it?
Yeah, in the way the system is configured, that is the only way.
Okay.
In system,
is that the safe way? Some people just unplug it out the wall, right?
I mean, power. The machine doesn't care how the power is turned on. All that power switch does is just hard cut power.
Okay.
So
you don't have to hit the switch.
No, unplugging it is exactly the same.
Okay.
All right. So removing this piece, this module is something that site should be able to replace without needing to call METTLER if they're confident. And the way this gets removed is you just unplug everything. You unplug all the wires. And you remove this ground wire. This ground wire. And this thing just comes out. All right? It's literally that easy. When you take this thing out, this SD card, you pull it out and you put it in the new one, and it'll transfer all of your settings. All right? Come on, get in there. All right? So that didn't take any time at all. And if I got out my 6mm socket, which, by the way, the tools you need to work on this is a metric socket set, a Phillips head screwdriver, and a tiny little electronic screwdriver. That's all the tools you need to take apart very nearly everything in this entire machine. All right? So with those things, it's all very simple. And when you put it back in, you're literally just plugging it back in. You're just plugging all your stuff back in. If my hands weren't so shaky. Get in there. Everything is keyed, so you can't put it in backwards. You can't mess it up unless you force stuff. Unless you start forcing stuff in, right? Come on. But with that in mind, if you just choose to never force anything, then you can't possibly break it, right? Come on, get in there. And then you check to see, oh, did I leave anything unplugged? Nope, looks like we're good. And you pop it back in. That's the whole process for replacing the module. All right, just unplugging stuff, a single bolt, plugging stuff in, moving that memory card over. All right. So that's the module. When you boot up the module, you'll just get a screen that says, "Would you like to load settings from the module or from that flash card?" And you just pick flash card right there on the screen. So for a moment, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back on, because one of the most common things that happens with these things is that the touch screen stops working. 9 times out of 10, it is a calibration issue. The way we calibrate the touch screen on this machine is we're gonna turn it on and touch the screen. Before the system boots up, turn it on, touch the screen, and you follow the on-screen instructions. Please touch the screen at the center of the ring. Boop. Even it was already not like quite calibrated right, because you see where I touched it, the X didn't appear. But yeah, so now the calibration is complete. Come on. Come on. There we go. All right. So most of the, if you have touchscreen problems, just popping in here, flicking the switch off, turning it back on and touch the screen, just doing that might just bring your screen back to life. All right, it saves you a whole module. I have gone to plenty of sites for a module replacement and just done that before I replace the module, and you save, it's like $7,000 for that computer. So you can save your company a lot of money just by knowing that.
Okay.
All right, so let's move down here to the most common point of pain in the system, which is this. All right, so this power supply provides all of the exacting voltages required for system operation. All right, it takes line in power from the plant at whatever voltage the system is designed to receive and outputs it to the module. All these wires route all of the data. These wires route the power. All right, I'm gonna go through the important ones here.
The data's at the bottom and the power's at the top.
Yeah, I'm gonna go through just the important wires because you don't even know what all this stuff does. I'm gonna go over the important stuff on here.
Wait, give me 1 second.
Yeah, please. You can sit on the chair. All right, so we're gonna go over power supply stuff, but first and foremost, this is where our power switch is. All right, that's pretty helpful. All right, this little switch here is your fault switch. If you have a fault up here and you open down here and this red light is on, flick the switch. If the light turns off, then your problem's up here. If the light doesn't turn off, then it doesn't tell you anything, but sometimes it half splits your problem for you. All right, so let's talk about this. Line in, power from the wall. All right, these are controls for your reject. All right, this is our reject relay. Whenever that bar goes red, this clicks over and the signal on common is sent over to automation to be used however they want. All right, RL2, this second relay, is reject confirmation. There's a sensor on that belt that sends a signal every time it opens. So that way, anytime the system says reject, it is checking that the reject actually moved. Okay? That's important because if this doesn't go over, like let's say the system is saying reject, but the arm isn't moving. Let's say we lost air. All right? If this isn't working and that reject isn't going, it doesn't matter how good the metal detectors see in metal, contaminants are going down the line. You check these you check the reject relay by passing a piece of metal and holding your finger on this relay, and if it clicks, then you know you're good. Check this, you cycle the rejector, and it should click every time that reject cycles. Pretty straightforward. All right? So over here, we have very important troubleshooting indications, okay? These are DC voltage measured to frame. Red should be, I'm on resistance. Red should be plus 15 volts, plus or minus 0.4. You can check down there as well. So 14 volts, or 15 volts plus or minus 0.4 volts. This should be 0 volts, plus or minus 0.1 volt. This should be negative 15 volts, plus or minus 0.4 volts. And this should be 6.5 volts, plus or minus 0.1 volts. These are the most important checks that you can make for power supply health. This is your good in, bad out for troubleshooting, all right? If you have good power in here and bad power out here, your power supply is bad. That's all you need to know, all right? So our two 15-volt wires, red and white, they are biasing voltage to the receiver coils in the head, all right? Those voltages have to be opposite of each other and within a tolerance in order for the machine to function properly. If they get too far from each other, you will start getting yellow or red screens. And if you get errors, you can come down and check those two. And if either one of them is out of tolerance, you need a new power supply. All right, super easy. These two blue wires, which are 6.5 volts plus or minus 0.1, those are CPU voltage. Those supply the voltage that the computer requires to run, okay? Because computers, they're lower voltage applications, right? So if these voltages begin to drop, you may get strange indications on your monitor. All right, you may get your touchscreen calibration may start failing all the time. Every time you turn the machine on, the touchscreen needs to be calibrated. It may become dim. It may become too bright. It may wash out. The touchscreen may intermittently stop working. The CPU voltage is vital to operation of the computer. All right. If any of those four voltages are whack, you need a new power supply. All right. So honestly, that's pretty much everything we need to know about the power supply from a troubleshooting perspective. All right. Generally speaking, even as a tech for this company, 99 times out of 100, if I have a power supply problem, I find it right here. All right, on these voltages. I find it on my good in and my bad out. All right, good in, bad out, bad power supply. All right, now removing the power supply is also really easy. All right, so the cool thing about these power supplies is the rails, come on, try to make a point here. The rails just come off. All right, so you don't have to de-wire any of this. All right, if you get a new power supply from METTLER, you pull these off, wires intact, and just plug them into the new one. Maintains the integrity of all your wiring. If you ever do need to unscrew these and move them around at the direction of maintenance, let's say they want the belt to stop instead of opening the thing, right? That's gonna require different wiring over here. Just take a picture of this before. It's all very colorful. So if any of these if you're on the phone with METTLER and they say, hey, unplug the yellow and brown one, just take a picture so that you have it. All right, and just keep a picture on like a computer somewhere so that let's say you get another one and you need to wire it up the same, you just have it. All right, super useful. The wiring diagram for the whole thing is also on the back of the case. So you can rewire this entire system by following the color code and putting them into the appropriate ports. All right, it won't help you with these guys right here because those are decided by these should be wired up by plant automation people, you know, like college boys. All right, these should be wired up by people who understand automation. But all of this, which is all the head cable stuff, you guys can do just by following this diagram. So removing and replacing the power supply is real easy, right? You're gonna pull all your rails. You're gonna pull all these rails off. And then there's just four nuts. There's just 4 nuts on the corners. And you get an 8mm socket and you pop them off and the whole thing just comes right out. Nothing to it. And when you get a new one, you slide the new one in, put your rails back in, and turn it back on. It really is that simple. I get trouble calls to swap power supplies. And every time I do it, I just grab an electrician. I'm like, hey man, watch me do this so that you never need me again. It really is that simple. And those are the 2 main things that you're gonna need to replace on this machine. All right? And if you guys get comfortable as a plant doing that, then you're probably not gonna need a lot of help from METTLER Toledo unless something goes way wrong. But if something goes way wrong, you're gonna want us here anyways. Right? But for the simple day-to-day part swaps, that's it. It really is that simple. Y'all got any questions about the power supply or the module? I know this isn't operator stuff, and I know that this would normally be stuff where I would expect questions from electricians. Oh yeah. Also, make sure that your new power supply, that the jumpers are in the same position. You get a close-up on that. You got to make sure these are all in the same position as well, because that'll also screw stuff up. But yeah, other than that, it's all pretty straightforward. Oh, I should probably turn it back on.